It has been a very, very long time since we've had a really accomplished and fun game about vampires. The last one that I remember that really resonated with me was Vampyr the Masquerade Bloodline from Troika way back when. It was able to capture that RPG spirit and also give you a taste of the vampiric fiction that was created over 100 years ago. When I heard the developers of that hidden hit Remember Me, which many of you may have never heard of, is taking a chance on a vampire game that is an RPG system that's set in the Penny Dreadful early 1900s period and has an exhaustive conversation system, I was all aboard. I was looking forward to this for years. Now having an opportunity to really dive in and spend dozens of hours with Vampyr, this game has all the pieces that could come together to create something great, but unfortunately fails to deliver on that initial promise.
It's a nightmare. That's it. So be it. Rational thinking only.
Now, Vampyr is again set in the world of early 19th century London during the Spanish flu. You play a World War I era Dr. Jonathan, who just happens to be a blood transfusion specialist. Yes, I'm not making this up. He becomes a vampire and now has to return to the land of London as a miscreant of the night and kind of figure out why he became a vampire and what's happening to the city. Immediately, you'll notice that the characterization of every single person on screen is a lot more than you see in other games. When you have the first choice to kill someone, you can either do that and kind of embrace your vampiric tendencies, or you can learn about how this one character affects the ecosystem of this one area. On its face, this seems incredibly compelling, and oftentimes it is. Many of the characters you meet, especially early on, speak to this burgeoning existentialist view that came out of World War I. It is bleak, it is drab, it is full of nothing, and it commits to that tone again and again, but doesn't really service the general conceit. Immediately when you start this game, you are told that you need to make difficult decisions in order to become more powerful. You need to become more powerful so that you can survive the pretty comprehensive combat system when you're fighting vampire hunters and other lesser vampires in the world. You gain points or XP through the blood that you intake, whether that's from these general combat systems where you're fighting nameless enemies and nameless vampires, or by convincing, tricking, and slaughtering the dozens of different named members of each community. Vampyr has a very interesting kind of caveat to that, where you are able to get more blood from each of these individuals by learning more about them. You do that through kind of a hint system where you talk to others, and it is very comprehensive and fun to do. There's also an eavesdropping system that allows you to get just that little bit more information to find out how everyone in this world is more guilty than you may assume, or also more innocent. The person that may have been begging to die might actually have family members that rely on him. All, again, sounds very interesting, but practically, while you're playing the game, there's no real need to do this. You get the blood that you need and the XP you need from fighting the generalized encounters and going through the narrative. And the game doesn't do anything to try to convince you that it's a good idea. It's the general conceit that you get at almost every loading screen, every moment, is that you need to make the tough decisions in order to survive. I never had to do that in my playthrough, and I'm not particularly good at games, and it just seemed like a complete letdown. especially since the world of London is very drab, it's incomprehensible to any other area, nothing really seems alive. The only thing that really has any weight are the characters that have been fully developed and realized and fully voice acted, and really fun to just kind of figure out and play through that mystery. The combat system is fun to learn, easy to master, though. I found myself about a third of the way through the game just relying on a 1-2 stun smash that seemed to work for almost my entire playthrough. Ultimately, this does try to grab that existential kind of Penny Dreadful Lord Byron take on vampirism and introduces a moral aspect to it that a lot of games can do very well. But because they made it so easy that it wasn't a central need, that the kind of player that would take the effort, and it does take effort, to learn every little caveat of every little person probably isn't the same sort of player that needs that much help in combat. It doesn't really come together, and unfortunately seems like it might be a game that is better experienced through YouTube. Ultimately, I wish that either maybe they dropped the combat system or almost streamlined the conversation system and spent more time on combat, because together they are not strong enough to service each other. By themselves, they could have been very strong, but unfortunately, yeah, Vampyr just, it doesn't reach that level that it should and that we should expect, really, in 2018.